welcome back to the Legal Weekly Whine, where we discuss the week's hottest legal topics. We're here today to talk about the recent appointments to cabinet offices, federal offices that Trump has done, including Matt Gaetz. We've got RFK,
Elon.
So we're going to talk about who's been appointed so far or selected, nominated, what it means, how they could be taken out, if at all, how that would happen, what the process is, and where do we go from here? So I'm Virginia Tehrani. I am a former prosecutor, unlike Matt Gaetz, just saying. Former prosecutor, former criminal defense attorney, currently the owner and managing partner of Tehrani Law, LLC, practicing in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, because you never need a lawyer. It's how you do. And today I've got multiple co-hosts, and we've swapped it up. For those of you listening rather than watching, it's a very exciting day for us because I have our co-host, Chelsey Rogers, in person.
Back here live in the studio. I'm excited. It's been forever.
It really has. I think it's been a year and a half since you've been in person.
Which seems a little insane to me.
It feels a little insane.
A little insane. I don't know. Do you guys think it's insane? Are you excited? We're here?
I'm excited. I don't know about Dr. Vile. He doesn't seem too excited.
It looks like we're ganging up to do an intervention on
I'm still marveling at the curls.
Yes, yeah. New hair.
New
Who
look,
dis?
looks nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does look nice. You look great. Here you are, superstar. And for those of you watching, we have another person. This one is brand new to us. So this is Margaret Lawson. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Margaret is one of our interns, currently our only intern, or only serving intern, if you can call it that. Margaret,
once an intern, always an intern. Let me just...
well, that's true, because Chelsey started as an intern and is now an attorney with Tehrani Law. So that's who Chelsey is. She's an attorney with Tehrani Law, LLC, as well as a partner in The Law Unscripted, which is hosting this podcast of the Legal Weekly Whine. It's also a bar preparation company, law school prep. It's got the core 8 subjects, including evidence, property, contracts, etc. So check that out, especially as law school classes are coming up for finals right now. So check out thelawunscripted.com for help with that. We even have outlines, and you can walk through hypotheticals and get some merch. Check that out. But anyway, back to Margaret. Margaret is a high school graduate who is headed to FAU.
FAU.
There we go. Down in Florida, in case everybody doesn't know. So she's headed there. She is looking to, I'll let her tell you what she's looking to do. So Margaret, what are your plans from here?
My plans are to go to FAU. I'm starting in the spring 2025. I'm going to be majoring in political science. I might double major in either sociology or education as well. Not really sure yet. And then from there, hopefully we'll go to law school. And then my goal right now is to become a custody attorney. And we'll see how that works out for me.
Which is impressive, because I have to say I've done a little bit of family law, and I don't anymore, and there's a reason for it. So props to you. I'm really super impressed with you, proud of you, and especially proud as she's somewhat part of the family. So it's technically and not I don't know which one it is, but we're gonna claim it. She's my goddaughter. So yay! Thrilled to have her here and being part of our family and part of our podcast. She is with Tehrani Law and the Law Unscripted right now. I don't know why we haven't scared her off from being an attorney yet, but she still wants to be.
It won't happen. It won't happen.
So she says. We'll see. Maybe we'll scare her enough. But our fourth co-host then is the wonderful and amazing Dr. John Vile, the Dean of the Honors College for Middle Tennessee State University. And he is joining us for a long time now, but he's one of our regular hosts for the Legal Weekly Whine. And his expertise, he doesn't want us anymore to say that it's political science, although he has his PhD in political science and has whatever, government. Okay, so government, and he is an expert. He agrees that he is an expert in the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention, and the amending process and constitutional law. So, the formidable Dr. Weil, welcome back.
Good to be here.
And you were funny right before we got on. You said you felt a little outnumbered today.
It does look a little bit like an intervention or something.
Much like it was at home. So.
Like we're all in our matching shirts. Come with us, Dr. Weil. It'll be fun.
Yes, and yes, I know you were surrounded by women.
Yes.
Being one of your daughters, I should know. We have your other daughter, my twin, Rebecca Hatmaker now, and she is our office manager for Tehrani Law. So we're making it a family business here.
I'm the only
and then our
one who
mother.
doesn't look the same in the firm. Actually, now that I think about that.
Yeah, but you're beautiful, and I consider you eye candy. People watch us because of you.
I thought I was the eye candy.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh my goodness.
Obviously, I am the constitutional law
Okay.
expert, and he is the eye candy. Come on, Virginia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where we are. We are going to get to these appointments because there's a lot to talk about. And
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a lot to talk about, and I have a lot to say.
Much
so
to
we're
be said.
yes,
Yes.
much to be said. So we're going to drink a little bit of wine, and Dr. Weil, this is an
Celsius.
homage to you
And Celsius.
and Celsius because she is not 21.
Yes.
So responsible drinking. This is what we advertise and support. Although we are drinking wine for some happy hour.
Yeah.
And we also support responsible drinking.
Yes.
We are at home, staying at home in our YouTube studio, and Margaret, under 21, is not drinking wine. She's drinking a Celsius. What flavor do you have?
I have Tropical Vibe.
Oh, I love that one. Good choice.
Vibes. All right. Wow, for our wine, and Dr. Weil again isn't drinking wine. We're going to drink the wine for him.
Yes.
He's drinking some water, some non-sparkling water.
Hydrated king. We love it.
Yeah, probably much more hydrated than I ever am.
Oh,
but
same.
whatever.
Same, for sure.
We are taking us to Luray Caverns.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, right.
excited.
So we went on a trip. We're going to bring it back. We went on a trip to Luray with Dr. Weil a couple of weeks ago for, I won't say what year, but his high school reunion. And it was Page County High School. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh.
And so while we were there, we visited the caverns, and I found the Luray Caverns Vineyard. We visited, and this was actually in the little Shenandoah Village recreation that they have across from the Luray Caverns. And this is a wonderful Mill Creek Rouge red wine. Now, tell me why I'm excited it's Mill Creek.
Because that's where my parents lived on Milk, and that's where we stayed in a B&B. Yes.
Yeah, so my grandparents, Dr. Weil's parents, lived on Mill Creek Road. And we actually, not only did we stay in a B&B while we were there, it's our grandparents' house that's been turned into a B&B that is run by my aunt and uncle.
Oh, that's so fun.
So it was really exciting. So I'm thrilled to bring in the Luray Caverns Vineyards and their wine and toast and cheer us on to this interesting podcast. So, and I get to cheers you in person.
Cheers. It's been so long.
It has
Cheers.
been. Cheers. I'm trying not to pour this down my shirt.
I just did my big gulp again. That's delicious.
Did you like it?
This is good.
Okay.
It's really good.
We're going to try not to drink the whole bottle in one sitting.
Yes, we're not doing that at all.
It goes down very easily.
It does.
It's not too sweet, but it's very light.
Yes.
It's very good. So.
But it's sweet enough. And sweet enough to taste a little like juice. I'm not going to lie.
It is. You can tell why I bought a bottle. My husband was there with me going, only buy one bottle, Virginia. And I was like, but it's so good. So here we are.
It's really pretty, yeah.
It is very pretty. It's a very pretty soft wine color. Anyway, so that's our wine. Cheers, Dr. Weil. I'm sorry we
You need
can't
to
share
sing
you.
a Shenandoah as you drink, or
Oh, that would be great. Can you give us a rendition?
probably shouldn't.
You actually have a
keep your
very deep and
audience
pretty
here.
voice.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, so let's get down to it. What we're all waiting for is these appointments. Dr. Weil, do you have the list of who's currently been selected for the different positions.
For the next
I
administration.
don't have a complete list.
What are our highlights?
I don't think
Let's
it's quite
get those
done.
highlights.
But I can give you some of the highlights.
Yes. Let me drink again.
And let me say before we start that the primary qualification for being appointed to the Supreme Court.
Oh, is this
is
the
to
Supreme
be
Court or
a-
cabinet?
Well, I'm sorry. Right.
was like-
Well, it may be for both.
Traumatized me a little bit. Don't tell me
cabinet.
we got another Supreme Court appointment
Right.
already.
It's basically to be an obsequious, pusillanimous sycophant.
Yeah.
If you check
Let's
all of those
define that.
boxes,
Those are big
Pardon?
words. Those are really big words.
yeah, obsequious basically means very deferential. Pusillanimous means lacking a backbone, and a sycophant is sort of a suck up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you add those three together, and you get a perfect candidate for the
Cabinet.
president's cabinet.
So I
I hate
am
to say that, but it turns out to be true.
I am president of the Dr. Vile fan club. So if you ever get elected, I am expecting a position in the cabinet.
Okay. Well, I haven't been standing by my phone even though last week, we explained how we all had been strong supporters.
Since
I did
the
not get a
beginning.
phone call,
Yes,
so I'm
and
clearly.
I just wanted to say, I thought we were
disappointed.
doing fact checks.
I-
so just listen to me say it now. I've always
Yeah.
been a fan.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's
Well,
some-
let's go through some of the main ones.
Yeah.
I think the most controversial. Well, there are 3 or 4 that are controversial. Let's pick on those.
Okay.
Matt
Okay.
Gaetz.
and he's been
Who has
nominated.
been the subject of both a Justice Department investigation and a congressional investigation for reputedly having sex with a minor.
Otherwise
No
known as,
trial experience whatsoever. He has been to law school, whose name I will not sully by mentioning.
Yeah.
So we have him. We have Tulsi Gabbard, who, as far as I can tell, has no real related experience in national intelligence, which is her post. Pete Hegseth, highly qualified as Secretary of Defense because he has been on Fox News as a host. He did serve in the military, although not to my knowledge in any leadership capacity. And then, of course, we got Bobby Kennedy Jr., a well-known vaccine skeptic who has been appointed or has been nominated, I guess we should say, to be Director of Health and Human Services. And this is hard. I can't even comprehend it, but I understand it has like a $3 trillion budget. And one of the things that he has, it involves all kinds of agencies. Apparently, he has been an attorney. He's been an environmental attorney. But he seems to be a little off on the deep end, not only in vaccination, but fluoridation, a number of other things. And as I understand it, he wants to begin by firing quite a few people, which will clearly demoralize the agency. And he wants to move the emphasis from contagious diseases, which apparently we have all conquered now, although vaccines don't work, to chronic diseases. So maybe that'll help people like me. I can figure out how to live to be 100 or 110 or whatever it is that I would aim for.
Make
all of
America
these,
healthy
of course-
again, right?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, I said make America healthy again.
Well, that's right. No, that's
Yeah.
that
That's a
is
slogan. Look,
what they're
hey,
saying.
Here's the thing.
If you can put a
They have
slogan
some
with
catchy
something.
slogans. Yeah, marketing experts here. They do have some catchy slogans.
They are.
Yeah, no, and and I guess if you had to account for the election, marketing would probably be as good an explanation of any. And I don't remember if we discussed this last week or not, but I think the Harris folks got caught flat-footed
Yeah.
by thinking that the older mechanisms of knocking on doors, which they did a lot. I mean, you
they really
can't,
did.
you can't fault them for not trying. They got lots of people out, knocked on lots of doors, but apparently social media are much more effective. The appearance on Joe Rogan's show,
That was
was
huge.
more effective than Harris's with CNN, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And then her SNL appearance. I mean, she even
she was
did.
on SNL and she was on Call Her
she
Daddy,
did do well on that.
which has a huge young female viewership. And to be fair, whether you like her politics or not, her TikTok account is one of the funniest political
That
TikTok.
did wonders. It did wonders, and I was very surprised that the younger voters like me who were just now able to vote didn't vote for her or didn't make as much of an impact as I thought they would because
And
her
especially
account
after
reached
Taylor came through,
everyone.
right?
That's what I'm saying.
Taylor Swift.
I mean, you didn't follow Taylor Swift? What is wrong with the world? I was very shocked. Yes.
And this, I like the point you've brought up, Margaret, is because this was your first election to vote in.
How was that?
It was great. It was really great. It was eye-opening, I guess. Yeah, it was a good experience.
So you might not like this, Margaret, but I have often referred in my books to the youth vote as the Loch Ness Monster. Every election,
Because does it not
people
exist? Because
predict
they never
that-
show up.
that they're going to turn out in record numbers, and occasionally they do. For example, when Obama was elected president, but their numbers were up, but so were everybody else's. So in relation, they still didn't have the impact that they could have had.
I know, and I was surprised that especially with this one because they tried to impact the youth to vote as much as they did, it still didn't work as I thought it would at least.
Well, again, one thing to remember, and I have an article I hope coming out on this, that the election is much close. That there's an illusion going on here in terms of the election, because, and I have the numbers here somewhere. The Electoral College looks, 312 to 226, but if you look at the actual percentages, last count it was 50.2% to 48.2%.
Yeah.
So there's a little now. What magnifies it a bit is that the Democrats managed to capture, the Republicans managed to capture both the House and the Senate. So you do sort of have a trifecta there, and, you also have more Republican nominations on the Supreme Court than you do Democrats on the Supreme Court.
And from our podcast last week, we determined it's 6-3 conservatives.
Yeah, and again, you have to be a little careful when you talk about the court and partisanship. I think many judges at least try to cast, they try to look at it as neutrally and as objectively as they can. But yes, it's certainly tilted right now in the conservative direction.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this.
We forgot the most important appointment. Elon Musk.
Well, and the reason I left him out, that's good. Well,
there's our dogs.
He just bought himself a country, guys.
Ramaswamy, remember, is also on this. That they have been appointed to a commission on governmental efficiency, but as I understand it, I don't think it's actually a cabinet post. It's more like an advisory body.
It's an entirely new creation that we haven't had before.
Right, and I what I have read suggests it may not be subject to senatorial confirmation.
How
can you do that?
Well, because it's not technically a cabinet post, but let's ask the Constitution expert here.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Constitution says almost nothing about the cabinet.
Oh,
other than that the president that there will be one. It doesn't define who the officers are in the cabinet. It might say Treasury. I'm not sure.
So can he just make up this body and say that they're not his cabinet members? And
well,
then
if it's
them?
advisory, I think you could. In other words, if it doesn't have legal, if what it's going to do is say, here's $2 trillion cut here, that's different from you have the right to fire $2 trillion worth of salary next year or whatever.
Okay, so that's how he could potentially be appointed. But yet, Chelsey, let me go to your point, because to the best of my knowledge, and I know he's not president, so before Dr. Weil jumps on me about this, I know it doesn't matter if he's not a U.S. citizen or wasn't naturalized or born here, because he's not president. But does it strike anybody else as a little bit odd that, is he British?
Oh, I have
That-
no idea.
He certainly has a strong accent, which
I believe he's British.
Is he British?
I think he's actually British. Does it strike anybody?
He might be naturalized. Yeah.
And maybe, but that this is one of the people, this technology guru who's in charge of SpaceX and heaven knows.
An X.
Right,
Twitter.
and X bought
the artist
X,
formerly known as
Tesla.
Twitter.
He's in charge of all of these things that now he's essentially running a country.
Well, I think also the amount of money he donated, and we talked about the possible legal implications of his putting money towards his get out the vote efforts in the most favorable. That's what I at least was thinking mostly of, is it kind of feels like he just bought himself a whole lot of power, personally to me, and people are not going to like that.
He's actually was born in South Africa.
Okay.
Which was a British colony.
Okay.
So the accent makes sense.
That's where he was born. But yeah, I think what Musk stands to benefit from would be the high tariffs that Trump has promised. If you make it more expensive to buy electric cars elsewhere, then where are you going to buy them?
Mm-hmm.
He's also, I believe, into cryptocurrency.
I believe
and
that's
Trump
true too.
Trump is very favorable toward that. And generally, business people tend to like less governmental regulation. And this is the opportunity of a lifetime, right? He has a chance to deal with, to try to cut through governmental regulation.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
He's being a good capitalist, honestly. If you have that much money if you have that much money to spend and you believe in the system, he's really winning at capitalism today. Like, honestly.
No, that's true. And that's absolutely true. And that's one of the things.
The problem, of course, and it's more exaggerated when it comes to the president.
Yeah.
This president-elect, I would say, has paid less attention to potential economic conflicts of interest than any president we've ever had.
Yeah.
And this showed up in the number of events that official events that he would have at his own resorts where Secret Service and others would come.
Commingling of everything.
Where foreign governments would apparently, make reservations, probably with the hope that Trump will notice that, they're spending money there. The Truth Social has received, tremendous boost by the fact, I think if Trump had not been reelected, you would think that the stock in that would have been, much lower.
And it was already suffering beforehand.
I wonder if Elon and him have a grand plan with Twitter and Truth Social.
Well, but I got to tell you, it's very interesting. And I know this isn't quite the legal aspect of it, but it's certainly some fallout is while we're looking at Truth Social stock being boosted, Twitter has had a mass exodus. I apologize. Former company known as Twitter. X has had a fairly mass exodus in this last week since the election. So maybe he's going to change it into a more conservative or change over.
And also remember that we have a pending law indicating that TikTok is not going to be able to operate unless it gets U.S. owners.
Right.
And so I don't know. I would suspect that anything that affected TikTok would also probably affect X.
Absolutely.
So there's all kinds of potential conflicts of interest here. But let's look at the the most concerning for lawyers and political scientists.
Yes.
It's got to be the Attorney General's office.
Matt Gaetz. I have to tell you, as an attorney, you're right. As an attorney, as a woman, as a former prosecutor, as a current trial attorney, as an attorney who's been practicing for 19 years.
As a former minor female.
As a former minor female.
I'm sorry, I'm mad about it, obviously.
I know, but yes, he's been appointed, or he's been nominated for Attorney General. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week, and this was with regard to our DOJ talk. We were talking about what happens with the Department of Justice now.
Right.
We were talking
in terms
about
of the prosecutions of Trump.
Exactly, especially with regard to the prosecution of Trump, Jack Smith. And now we're going back to the Department of Justice, and we're looking at the Attorney General for the United States is the attorney in charge of the Justice Department, the Federal Justice Department, the DOJ, and technically then in charge of leadership for the FBI. And
so if you go back historically, talk a little bit about the Emperor Caligula. Familiar with him?
Yeah, I do remember. Totally.
Okay. Well,
Margaret, do you remember?
He was one of the most bloodthirsty of the Roman emperors, very corrupt. Now, apparently the story got embellished as it was passed on, but he allegedly threatened to nominate his horse to be a consul in the Roman Senate. And it was basically his way of thumbing his nose or giving the middle finger to any restraints on his own power. And really I think of all the, well, there are two of these that there's, of all the nominations, I think this has the one with the greatest potential for the Senate to reject it.
Yes.
Really?
Now, apparently, Trump is looking for a workaround, which is he wants the Senate to go into recess, and then he's going to make a recess appointment. Now, the recess appointments clause...
Can you do that?
That was very necessary at a time. Oh, yeah. This was very necessary at a time where this Congress would only maybe meet 6 months a year.
Sure.
We don't need it anymore because Congress is almost constantly in session.
And is this
But
like
it's
a
a way
constitutional
basically
thing?
of getting around the checks and balances that are built into the Senate's role in advice and consent, which is, yay or nay.
Okay.
And it's a very serious development. And now and again, I really, it wouldn't surprise me if Trump maybe knows that of all the appointments, this one isn't going to go through. The other thing to say, though, is,
I know where you're headed.
It's not all that big a difference from some of the others, except that it does deal with, it's not just giving out goodies to people. It deals with how our law is going to be administered. And if you have someone, who thinks he's a victim of the law, who's now going to go in and, if he does decimate the FBI, if he decimates the Justice Department, they're going to be good people in justice who are going to want to resign. And I would counsel them not to. If they're not fired. Now, they may be fired.
And that's the thing, is he would have discretion for firing. It's like any appointed person. So in Virginia, right, the Commonwealth's attorneys, those are the state's attorneys, district attorneys, however they're called in your state, that are in charge of each county or jurisdiction. The Commonwealth's attorneys are elected. And every time a new one is elected, they come in and clean it out. They fire everyone that they don't think is loyal to them or would do a good job, and they put everybody else in. So you're right.
Yeah. And again, there are times where this is appropriate. Not every governmental official is efficient, is good. But if the test is no longer, how are you following the Constitution?
Right.
But are you following Donald Trump? Then we could be in for a world of hurt here. So I think it's a very concerning appointment. And frankly, let me see if I can find it. I wanted to read my Bible on things political is often the Federalist Papers. And you can see I have a very it's falling apart.
Used and loved version.
I like to be like Justice Harlan, who apparently went to sleep every night with a copy of the Bible and the Constitution under his pillow.
Well, you could have both with the
But
Trump
James
Bible.
Madison.
Now that would be an investment
He just
piece.
ignored me.
Yes. That's an investment
James
piece right
Madison in Federalist number 51. Right before he talks about men not being angels and governments being necessary, says, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. The interest of the man must be connected with the constitutional rights of the place. So traditionally, members of the Senate would say, I don't care who the president is. We're going to make an independent judgment on behalf of the country and on behalf of the Constitution as to whether this person is qualified for an office. But what may very well happen, there seem to be some who say, he brought us to the dance. We won the election. We should defer to the president. And I will say a certain amount of deference to a president, a good amount of deference to a president on cabinet officers is appropriate.
Of course.
We've elected a president for a reason. He has a majority behind him. First majority he's had, by the way, in 3 elections, but he has that now. And he should have some discretion. But if the senators have the same doubts that I do about this man's character and about his ability to do the job, they ought to clearly put that red line down and say, not on our watch.
Right.
And they ought to be willing to do it. What'll probably happen is if anybody peels off from him, and here's what I like about the Senate, because senators have 6-year terms.
Right.
Those who were just elected are going to be there through Trump's term and then 2 more years. So they have an ability potentially to oppose Trump and still not have to worry about re-election for a while.
Right.
So I think if he doesn't bypass the Senate, which again, the Senate can stop that. They don't have to put themselves in recess.
And that's what I'm going to ask you. So let me pause you. Let's back up to that, and then I'm going to back up to a couple more fundamentals. So you're saying that he's trying to put the Senate in recess in order to, and I'm realizing with the microphone placement, I'm echoing. He's trying to put them into recess so he can make this recess appointment. Is there a way he
even put them in, right? That's he can't do that, right?
Well, if they disagree, there's a phrase in the Constitution that says that if they agree on the time of adjournment, that the president can step in if they disagree. It really was made for a different time and a different situation. Right. It was not meant as a sort of like the election, as a get out of jail free card or bypass the Senate card. Any self-respecting senator, if they care about the institution, that's where the Federalists should kick in. Their interests should be connected as much to the place and the institution as it is to Trump. And that's where, I think country institutions come before party and before individual loyalties.
So let me back us up even further. So we've sort of bantied about with the issues that we're having with Gaetz, but let's talk specifics. The issues that are being brought up as to why at least some senators should be concerned and have bigger questions and should do some more vetting rather than just simply being a rubber stamp. The first ones to me, as an attorney, I'm going to bring up the biggest thing as an attorney, is this man is just a bit younger than me. Just a bit. 2 years younger than me. And he has never been a prosecutor. He has never been in federal as a federal lawyer.
That is what I'm saying is crazy to me.
Ever.
That's
never
wild.
A government attorney. He's only been in private practice. And let's add on top of that at least for the last, I believe, 10 to 12 years he's been in politics and not the law.
And he's never done a trial, is my understanding.
And that's not terribly unusual. I mean, we've had other attorneys general who have also been in politics, but it's that usually they have some prior experience, at least as a law professor or prosecutor or something like that.
And Chelsey's saying that this guy's never even done a trial.
That's my understanding. Is that he has no trial, that he's never been first chair. I don't think he's done a trial period, but at least has never been first chair of any trial.
It's honestly, it's insulting.
Well, and
let's let it play out. Let's put him in a courtroom for the first time on national television. I would love to watch
but the problem is, if he does that, he'll be representing the United States.
Exactly. He's the attorney for the United States.
And my biggest thing is the fact that he's representing the United States, but he's the one who got checked out by the FBI.
Yeah.
That is insanely insulting to us as a whole, as a nation.
Sure.
And there's the bigger thing. So
we have a felon for president.
Okay, but we have a president
seems as if almost
elect.
Trump did this out of spite.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because he was
exactly.
let me find the only other person to be attorney general that has gotten investigated by the FBI.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's make this a trend.
Yeah.
And again, President-elect Trump is a convicted felon.
And exactly.
And his get out of jail free card was the election.
I'll be elected.
So, do you want this man representing justice, blindfolded?
Right. So let's pick up what Margaret's saying is so this is the bigger thing.
Yeah.
So there's the attorney issue is, I've done hundreds of trials in my career. I hate to estimate too far, but I honestly would say it's at least
you want the job, don't you?
Here. I don't. Not under this
You think
man.
if Gaetz gets turned down, he's going to call you, right?
Oh no! He should, but I don't want him to, nor would I, nor would he. But but honestly, so Margaret's bringing up the second issue that is concerning people and is alarming for even more than just attorneys, is he was investigated by the FBI in a federal probe as to allegations. No proof has been, no indictments were put down, but at least
there's
allegations.
Proof, there's just not an indictment.
Correct.
Right.
Sex trafficking and illicit drug use.
Right.
And the sex trafficking is allegedly of a 17-year-old female. And this is where Chelsey's comment before of, insulted as a female is coming in. And then there's a congressional ethics probe into the same behavior, even though an indictment wasn't issued. And as I understand it, he resigned on Wednesday pending this nomination, but the report was supposed to come out in Congress on Friday.
Right.
And now they're not releasing it because he's no longer a congressman.
I would be very surprised if someone doesn't leak it. But,
I hope so.
Speaker Johnson has said that they are not going to release it. But here, this goes to actually just as fundamental an issue. This was not on anyone's radar other than maybe Trump's. Apparently, Gaetz gets on the plane with him. They have a great conversation. He casts aside the other possibilities and decides on him. So there's been, as far as I can tell, there's been no internal vetting. And what vetting we know in terms of Congress and the Justice Department, even though they didn't indict, seems fairly damning. Not the kind of person. Even if there were a doubt on something like this, you would at least probably suspend until you were able to ascertain. I mean, this is, in my book, a fairly serious charge.
Absolutely. Let's nominate Diddy.
I mean, truly, I think that's the thing is the idea that I think the only reason there isn't some internal vetting by Trump's team is that what is the standard of what we're vetting when we look at who
our options are?
Well, no, who the leader of the administration is and who the candidate turned president-elect if that is the leader of this, what standards are we using to vet someone? Right. Like, what is the bar?
Historically, what's interesting, let's make a broader point. I mean, we focused on this one. But, Pete Hegseth, his primary qualification for being Secretary of Defense has been a Fox News host.
Could have been
pretty big
former
gap
military,
there.
right?
Robert Kennedy, his father certainly was a great man. I mean, he's been an environmental attorney, but apparently he's beheading one of the largest bureaucracies in the United States with no experience doing this kind of thing.
Right.
And
and even Gaetz has put someone in charge of the FBI and the DOJ who's calling for its dismantling.
Right.
And maybe that's where Trump's saying, well, this is the mandate I've been given. But I do not remember, and there are four of us here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not remember Donald Trump running on a platform of dismantling.
Go back to 2016.
Well, he did when it came to he's threatened to eliminate Department of Education.
Yes,
but that's not the Department of Justice.
I don't think he sees them differently.
He has certainly said a lot of bad things about the FBI, particularly after the raid on his house, which required, as we know, probable cause. But the point I was going to get to earlier. One of the fascinating, part of this is just ideological. Part of it may be, I don't care if they get nominated, if they get approved or not. I'm just going to sort of stick it to everybody and, see how they react. But this may come from a notion that goes all the way back to Andrew Jackson, which is Jackson had a deep suspicion of basically what we would call expertise. He's almost the opposite of the later progressive era, where I think they went to the other extreme, which is we're going to put in experts and they're going to tell us what to do, and we're all going to follow along. Jackson basically thought that most any person in the country could do any job that was appointed in government. And so, and he did, bank, he doesn't like the national bank, so they appointed somebody competent, but not a banker to do it.
Right.
And I think you just sort of see this does reflect sort of Trump's voter base.
Yes.
They're disillusioned with the way government has been operated. They think they're a bunch of clowns, so let's put another group of clowns in their place. Only we won't worry too much about educational or experiential backgrounds. We'll just put in somebody who will do what we tell them to do. And if you remember back, I'm sure you do, Andrew Jackson.
Oh yeah.
When
I
Albert
remember
Gallatin,
like it was yesterday.
Albert Gallatin, Secretary of the Treasury, refuses to get rid of the bank. He fires Gallatin and puts Roger Taney in his place. And Taney says, I'll do it.
So let's hop over to another larger question, and I think we all assume, especially the news reporters out there, they all assume that we know how this happens. But Dr. Val, I'm going to go back to the Constitution, and as our Constitution expert, how do these nominations work? How many cabinet? We're going to go back. We did a little bit of this last week, but I want to make sure we reiterate how many cabinet positions are there. How do they get appointed? How did they get nominated? Then how do they get appointed? And what, if anything, can be done to stop their appointment and then to remove them from appointment?
Okay. I don't know the exact number. I'm trying to look it up right now. This says, according to, I think it's probably AI, but maybe not, 15 heads of executive departments. We talked last week.
That was not in the Constitution.
Right. The first three were the Attorney General, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of State. That number has varied as new cabinet offices have been added and others have been, combined or changed.
But who decides that they are a cabinet office? What defines a cabinet office?
Pardon?
What defines a cabinet office?
They're hitting a bureaucracy. They're hitting a department, agriculture, state department, defense department, health and human services, which we said, combines all, CDC and all these other agencies
And
there.
that's Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So, the president has the responsibility of nominating, and assuming it's not a recess appointment, what then happens is it goes to the Senate, and the Senate either confirms or rejects nominees. And again, typically the Senate is more deferential,
Right.
as it should be, to cabinet officers than it would be to Supreme Court justices.
But how much do they have to vote it by? And Margaret, I'm going to jump over to you. I know you loved your government class.
Yes.
Do you remember ever discussing this particular topic in government? Okay, that's all right. So this is I'm afraid technology is failing me over here. We thought we had the right headphones. She can hear us, but not you, Dr. Vile, as well. So we're talking about the specific
nomination and confirmation process.
Confirmation by the Senate of these cabinet members. Did you ever talk in your high school government class about confirmations, cabinet members, anything like that?
I don't. It was sophomore year in high school, so don't hold me to it. I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't remember it, and with my knowledge of government as it is right now, I barely had an understanding of that.
I mean, the important thing is, the Senate, primary role of the Senate is that bills have to be adopted by both houses. So you need, you can't adopt a bill without the House and Senate agreeing, majorities of it.
A bill.
But then,
I know that.
But okay.
I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. But then there are certain responsibilities that are unique to the Senate. One is confirmation of treaties, which requires a 2/3 majority. Another is trials of impeachment, which also requires a 2/3 majority to convict. And then
of the Senate, not
of the Senate.
House.
That's right.
For impeachment.
So we're talking just about the Senate. And then, the Senate has the power of advice and consent to presidential appointments, which means they have the right by majority vote. Now that's complicated,
right?
In that there are some issues, and I can't remember for lower court judges. We talked about this last week. Mm-hmm. For Supreme Court justices, I believe it is now down to a majority, but in some cases, people can filibuster, and it takes 60 votes for closure to end the filibuster.
And when we're looking then at the Senate confirmations of the cabinet officers by majority, are we really looking at just one more than half? Is that all we need?
That's my understanding. Well, and actually, if you have a Republican president, if you had a split, then that vice president could then cast the deciding vote, as Kamala Harris did many times during her.
So we would only need 50
last
in the VP. Okay, lovely.
Okay, so excellent. So 50 votes is all that's needed.
Right, and I think VP. You have, what is it right now, 40, you have 53 who are Republicans right now.
Is it 53 or is it that Democrat?
Well, don't ask me.
Well, the 53 are the Republicans for the upcoming term versus the current term, which is why Trump's trying to do this recess.
Right. So you would have to have, assuming, I think it's hard to believe that most Democrats are going to take the attitude we took here today, that this person isn't qualified.
Right.
I think most Republicans would. I mean, the way to think about this is, what if Biden put forth someone in the same situation? Mm-hmm. I don't think Republicans, I know Republicans would vote against it.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you going, if the Democrats are completely against this, can you peel off 4 or more Republicans who say, I'm for Trump, or I'm not for Trump, but I'm for Trump,
acceptable.
Regardless of whether I like Trump or not, I just think this,
Right.
if you think about it, you're really doing the president a favor if you don't confirm someone that you really think is incompetent. If he's incompetent, he's going to make your president and your party look bad over the long term. So this is where
but after how much destruction in the first place? I mean, how much harm are we going to do before we make him look bad? So that leads to the second question. I think we've just gotten
the polarized. I agree. Like in an ideal world, they would vote, for the good of the institution, for the good of the country. But I think everyone has put on their jerseys and are falling in line with their votes.
And this is why now I have to say, so here's a personal thing, and I'm going to lay it out here and ask for a minute. I'm going to make an admission of what school he's from. And there's a reason I'm doing it. And Margaret's gonna be interested too, because her father was in the same school. We went to school together. We were on trial team together. I graduated with a Juris Doctorate from William and Mary. College of William and Mary Law School, fine institution. Love my education, have never regretted it. Feel like it's been an asset to me. But when I heard that Gaetz is from William and Mary, I was appalled. Not that I think that the attorneys who think differently than me should be from... No. It's not that, right? I think
not ideological.
Right. There are fine attorneys who disagree with me politically. Amazing attorneys. There are a lot of attorneys who went into politics that I know. But this one just shook me. It's like, I'm hoping they disclaim him or don't mention him. And I'm no law school person out there. I don't have any representation except that they're my alma mater. But I have to tell you this. But hold on, Dr. Vile, because I think this is important. I have a friend from law school who was in my year. We graduated in 2005. I did. I don't know about Gaetz. I know I don't remember him or recognize him. I think he was behind me. But I have a classmate who graduated with me who is currently the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. I liked the guy. He was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine. We're not close anymore. It's been a while since I've seen him, but I consider him a friend. He and I were on trial team together. Yeah. He did mock trials with me. He was the #1 ranking trial team member, much to my chagrin, just so we know. #1 ranking trial team member in my class at William and Mary. Has done his life's work, has been as an attorney, and recently ran and was elected as Attorney General of Virginia. Not in this year, but in a prior year's election. And I've never been so proud of one of my classmates. Even though he ran as a Republican and I disagreed with some of the platforms that he was running, I was proud of him.
Yeah.
And I was pleased as a friend, as a colleague from William and Mary. And honestly, I don't know how much he supports Trump or doesn't. In my mind, honestly, I don't care because I respect the man and the attorney. But I kept it. My first thought when I heard it was Gaetz was, of all of the people out there, if you got to choose someone from William and Mary, what about Jason?
Yeah.
What about Attorney General Miyares representing the good Commonwealth of Virginia, who, again, politically, we all may disagree. I may disagree with him politically, but I believe he is doing his very best. I believe he has the good experience to do it. And he's an immigrant. His family are families of immigrants, which gives him, in my mind, an extra level of understanding, compassion, and wisdom in making strong decisions as an attorney for the U.S. So I have to say it was truly a disappointment.
Yeah. And that's another common misconception.
Oh, one more. Yeah. Make sure you're her here.
That's another common misconception I think people have about the Republican Party and Republican elects is that they're not stupid. They're not wrong. It's a democracy. Everyone's right in their own ways. It's just a matter of that was a really poor pick. You couldn't find anybody that wasn't investigated by the FBI or has some sort of allegation against them. Yeah. I'm sure, like you said, your classmate is just one person who would have been a fine Republican elect.
Absolutely.
You had some fine professors there, too.
It seems intentional. It seems disrespectful.
Yes.
And that is the last person that I want representing me as Attorney General. And I'm not even a Republican.
Right.
And let me kibitz here on William and Mary.
Oh. Now, this is your alma mater for undergrad.
It's the Marshall Wythe School of Law.
Thank you. Yes.
And there are few, if any, jurists, lawyers who had better reputations for propriety and justice, particularly than Wythe,
George
or
Wythe.
Greater knowledge of the law and commitment to his country than John Marshall. And so,
former Supreme Court justice.
Pardon?
Former Supreme Court justice.
Absolutely.
That's what the law school was named for. And George Wythe was one of the founders of law and legal education in the U.S.
Who did he teach?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is funny. He taught James Madison. However, let me assure you, this was not the James Madison, the president. It was a cousin? What did we find out?
Yeah, it was a relative who was actually important in his own right. He was a bishop, an Episcopal bishop, who headed the College of William and Mary.
But he was not listed as bishop.
He was just listed as James Madison.
I will tell you, okay, so funny story. When we got to make this lighten this up. So as my father, of course, Dr. Weil went and visited with me. I was proud to show him off. And then I was extremely embarrassed. In a funny way, though, I have to say.
Okay.
So Dean Taylor Reevely was there as our president at the time of the law school. Loved Dean Reevely. Absolutely adored him. I don't know if he still remembers me, but I know he did for at least quite a while. I feel like I had his respect, but that's neither here nor there, except for the fact that Dr. Weil visited and saw this statue. And it's literally in front. There's a statue of Marshall and Wythe in front of the law school. Just right there in front. Front doors, there it is. You have to walk past them. Yeah. The law students would decorate them and put clothes and all this stuff on them. It was the thing to do.
Funny hats.
Whatever it was. And there's the plaque on there that reads who George Wythe has taught, and it's James Madison. And Dr. Weil was had much angst over this, and actually contacted Dean Reevely, President Reevely, about it. So there ended up being that year, Dean Reevely for many years, including, but for this particular year, he was teaching a course called The Citizen Lawyer. It was very important to him to say that we are lawyers, but we are citizens first.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is for the citizenry and for the overall good of America. And he wanted to instill this in all of us as we went through the law school. And he was teaching about this. And my friend Keith, who was my boyfriend at the time, one of Mike's classmates, this whole entourage was in this class when Dean Reevely decided to say something about a student's father.
I think I would have melted into my seat.
Who had contacted him to lay a complaint about the plaque outside regarding John Wythe and him him teaching James Madison. And of course, I became the talk of the law school when my boyfriend Keith, decided to let it leak that I was the student who had said father, who had made this complaint.
Oh my God.
So on the lighter side.
Okay, but there's another famous person though that
and
was
here
correct.
We're back on the serious side. Go ahead.
Okay. Who did he teach?
Thomas Jefferson.
Mr. Jefferson.
Mr. Jefferson.
Closest friend of James Madison. Yes. Other than Dolly.
So that I remember, yes. Thomas Jefferson was one of his proteges. student. So we've got that. Now, one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up for this topic. Is Dr. Whine, our Constitution expert, if any of these appointments get in and are nominated through recess or otherwise, can
And
they be
confirmed.
removed and confirmed? Sorry, confirmed, not just nominated. Confirmed, they are nominated. Can they be removed?
Yes.
And how?
Presidential fiat. I don't want you anymore.
Is that the only reason? Is that the only way is Trump would fire them?
Well, I mean, they could resign.
Can the Senate do anything?
I think they could be impeached and convicted.
Okay,
But
you say you
basically,
think, But
Pardon?
how sure of you are of this you think, and is it not defined in the Constitution anywhere?
Well, if they're officers of the United States, and I think they are, they're subject to. What's ambiguous is the Constitution specifies how they're appointed and confirmed. It doesn't specify how they're removed, but there's a famous case, Myers versus United States and others, which have asserted, as James Madison believed, that the power to appoint includes the power to remove. And the notion is that as executive officials, the president is in the best position to know whether they are doing the job that they ought to be and whether they're doing it effectively. And so he has the right to remove them.
Now, here's the $1 million question for the end. Is there anything to prevent him from remaining, Gaetz specifically, but any of them, from remaining in their position should they be convicted of a felony?
Is that a high crime?
No.
Is that a high crime?
I mean,
But I think
to my knowledge,
yeah.
but actually you're asking a very important question because it seems fairly clear, and I'm not sure that I agree with it, but I know what the law, the current interpretation of the law is that you cannot indict a sitting president. He has executive privilege, but I don't think executive privilege extends in that manner to cabinet officers. So I believe that they could be impeached and convicted.
However, if it's federal, he could be pardoned by the president.
He could. You wouldn't be very effective, I would think, if you had been. Well, not if he's impeached.
Which I find a bit absurd.
Pardon power does not extend to impeach.
No. If he's convicted federally of a crime,
he could be pardoned. And Margaret has a really interesting, I know where you're headed, a comment here.
No one is above the law.
Well,
I think the Supreme Court would currently
Trump
disagree.
versus United States.
That's what I'm saying.
It's in the I can't emphasize enough. It's in the Constitution.
It's not.
Nobody should be above the law.
It's not. I wish it were.
Not actually.
And the current
The
Supreme
words
Court
are
would
not
disagree
there.
with you. No.
We all believe that it is. It's such a fundamental idea.
And actually,
instilled.
separation of church and state isn't in there either, but not actually in there, yeah.
See, this is the real reaction. No, this is the real reaction. And Margaret, that's why I love that you're here. Yeah. Because these are the fundamentals we grow up with. Is believing and knowing and identifying with, and it's not actually written.
Right.
So
this is why I believe the
upset
court
with
made a serious mistake in Trump versus United States.
Yeah, because they said, actually, the president is above the law. Guys, we forgot for 200 years, but the president is above the law. JK.
Okay. And there's a younger generation.
The president, of course, is still subject to impeachment and conviction. The problem is
only under impeachment.
2/3 majority required to convict. It's very unlikely, He's
already
survived
been
twice.
Twice.
And now we're going to have a Republican Congress.
The body was never meant to endure 3 Trump presidential runs, okay? I can't do this.
I will say my own emotional angst. I've spoken to a couple friends who are counselors, and they're saying that the uptick in business has been extreme. Not surprising to them, but extreme. And I had a client I was speaking with recently at the courthouse. Margaret was with me, and we actually were talking about the election. And I made this comment about one of my counselor friends saying that there's been an uptick in counseling services, and especially regarding the election. And because of the election, and this client was dumbfounded. And I was like, honestly, I think I should be going too. So maybe we all should.
Group therapy sesh, guys.
You know what's fascinating is during Watergate, there was an extreme tick upward in people going to law school. Because
did you hear that?
During Watergate, there was a huge uptick in people who decided to go to law school.
Right, because they saw what could be done.
Yeah.
And recently, pre-law is way down.
Yeah, even you were saying yesterday or 2 days ago, and this is what I think is interesting for Margaret, who's intending to go to law school and do political science, is, Dr. Vile, you were saying that even at Middle Tennessee State University, where I was a student and I studied political science with pre-law emphasis, there were, hundreds of us who did. Yeah. And now what's the number that you believe?
Well, as I thought about that, it may have been the international relations, but
still,
both that
down.
and
the
this are
down.
I think there's been
some of it. I think is just sort of the discouragement of looking at extreme partisanship in Washington and lawyers. We don't seem to have been that effective in taking care of some of these problems.
I think it's
sorry, I don't mean to
go ahead.
But I think it's this sense of learned hopelessness.
Yeah.
Or helplessness, I guess.
Yeah.
It feels like there's really nothing that we can do because no matter how much we protest, how much we try, we can even talk about Roe v. Wade. Actually, I think that's a great point. Roe v. Wade was passed in the 70s and it's just been overturned.
In your generation.
In our generation. And so it's proving to us that no matter how much work we do, there's still work that needs to be done, but who's going to do it? Because no matter how much we try, we still go back.
What I find most interesting about Roe versus Wade, and probably have a different question, it wasn't actually ever adopted as legislation.
No, it was never codified into legislation,
but it was...
No, but what's interesting is that many states, and primary critique of Roe versus Wade, and I've engaged in this, is that it was too much like a law as opposed to a judicial decision.
Regarding
it went far beyond what they needed for that individual case. Trimesters, that may or may not be a good way to do it, but it's not in the Constitution.
It was the most bright line rule of the Supreme Court cases, I feel like, that we read in law school. They usually like to hem and haw and hem and haw.
Right.
Like, I think
it's a little like Miranda.
Yeah.
Where, you set forth, you got to give this warning and that.
Yeah.
Right.
But
and
what's
Miranda's
fascinating is, despite all those criticisms, a lot of the states are essentially, they're voting to go back to Roe versus Wade as though it had been a law rather than a judicial decision.
Well, that was Harris's whole campaign. She said the protections that we had during Roe v. Wade.
Right. She treated it like a law.
But that's how it's been treated. And Margaret's got a great point of it's been acting like a law for all of this time. So to overturn it has been very shocking. On all sides, whether you agree with it or not, it's been a shock that it even happened. So to overturn this decision, so forget about the law or judicial decision, to overturn the decision has had tremendous impact. And I think the largest impact of a reversal of a Supreme Court decision, I would argue, since Brown versus Board of Education.
But not large enough to sway the election.
Correct.
And that's what's even more surprising.
I think
the national election.
I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I think sort of that we started with the decrease in people applying to law school. I don't have the numbers on this, but I feel like culturally, at least, there has been a rise of this like anti-intellectualism, that college is a waste of time, and then you add that with the rising cost of college and of law school, astronomical. and that there seems to be this like cultural shift, especially when you look at the demographics that voted most heavily for Trump. Like, it makes a lot of sense, this idea that these kids go to school and learn nothing. They're partying for 4 years, and it means it has improved nothing in our society. And this is, like, I think culturally there's the huge mass of our population that feels that way, which
Well, and honestly, and Margaret, I'll end with this. I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
And so happy with your decisions, your motivation. Even with your generation, I think you're exceeding and still believing that there is hope. And you can do something about it. And I'm pleased to have you on our team. Pleased to have you as part of my family. Thrilled Chelsey is here as part of our team. Dr. Vial, I know you're not part of the law office, but you are certainly part of our law and scripted family.
Part of your family.
Yeah. Yes, and part of my family, of course. Just related and all. By blood, going back to Lorraine. But on that, what we're going to do is we're going to conclude that topic. This ended up being a long topic, so I'm glad we didn't choose multiple topics. But stay tuned with us over the next few weeks. We're definitely there's a Louisiana case.
Oh, I can't wait.
A huge Louisiana case regarding the 10 Commandments. We have to talk about that. This is legal, huge legal issue, and that's being surpassed by all of the election. Of course, we're talking about the election portion first, but it is a huge legal case that we're going to talk about. We are still going to go back to the executive orders regarding legality. So we're going to talk about that, and of course, stay up to date with the other week's hottest legal topics. So thank you all for being with me. Dr. Vial, thanks for being outnumbered and for joining us here. But we're so happy for all of you. Subscribe and like so that you can see our show. Keep up with us up to date when we publish. Also, feel free to share. Please do share. Get the commentary out. Like us or don't. It's still views, and we still encourage the sharing so that there is, through education and learning, conversations. If you disagree with us, disagree. Please make it cordial, or at least not
tag me,
or at least not defamatory in nature, nasty, or cursing. We don't like that or approve or appreciate that, and we don't do it either. But in that case, what we will do is we will leave you this time and catch you next time on the Legal Weekly Whine.